putting the client first. That sounds very simple. Put the client first. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Okay. Well, we're in contrast, we're familiar with traditional sales and marketing, which is all about manipulating a sale, which is, you know, getting to impulse buying, getting to enticement, all the various things which put the sale before the person. Putting the person first is actually the conversation which discovers whether there's sufficient of a match between the impact of your true gift on their number one challenge for it to be a viable relationship. And that also involves taking as much time as it takes to get to that point. And the relationship starts out as a coaching relationship from day one. So you've shifted from the sales and marketing model to the coaching one. And so that relationship's consistent with the coaching practice, whereas sales and marketing isn't.
So it would sound to me that it makes it much easier for someone to flow from a prospect to a client if you've been coaching them the whole time, right?
Yes, I mean, it makes the transition into a sale seamless because they've got to know you as a coach. You've moved them forward as a coach. They, you know, the human relationships there. And unlike sales, unlike traditional sales, the only important outcome is that the match is strong enough. And if it's not, you're not attached to any outcomes and you let it go in the knowledge that the client will find someone with a closer match and you're leaving space in your practice for someone where there'll be a stronger match. So that's where abundance comes in and it all evens out.
Yeah, definitely. Now, have you ever had a client who's gone through having that aha moment where they started off trying to sell everybody, just telling them about their services, and they flipped over to just basically talking to people and getting to know them first and really being energized about the client and their business and everything? And if so, what were the results?
Well, it's quite interesting. I mean, I have a current client who, on the one hand, is a super salesman, and on the other hand, sees the value of moving into the new way of doing things. So if you like, he's in transition. And we were having a conversation earlier today, which was around basically allow that transition to occur naturally. You're in transition and you know you don't need to make any radical changes. Just treat it as part of the flow and you know, don't beat yourself up in terms of the old framework.
Well, as they say, force negates, right, Dennis? Force negates, and a lot of times when we're pushing, you know, what that means is a lot of times when we're pushing in a certain direction, trying to force something to happen, we get a lot of pushback from whether it's the universe, God, whatever higher power, or whatever you believe that's greater than yourself will give you that pushback because you're not in the flow and not going with the flow, right?
And at the same time, recognizing that transitions are involved. So it's not 1 minute you're one thing and 1 minute you're the next, but that you're actually on a journey. And the important thing is to make sort of baby steps in a direction which serves.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not. I mean, look at 100. You look at somebody who runs a 100-yard dash. I mean, when they cross the finish line, they don't just stop abruptly because they're moving very, very quickly. Especially if like you're Usain Bolt, you know, you're going very, very quickly, and you can't just stop, or you would hurt yourself. So I don't understand. I think. Well, let me ask you this: do you find a lot of people don't understand why they can't just switch like that?
I think where the issues occur is at the level of expectation. So if to some extent you can be less tight on questions of expectation, because the whole thing that's being balanced is two different worlds, one in which you're letting things be, letting things go, and the other in which you're trying to do things, control things. And actually the issue is how you balance these. So I think a good example of this is how you relate to goals. goals actually involve two dimensions. They involve the being dimension with the vision, and they involve the doing dimension with the mission. When there's a conflict is when the doing is foreground and the being is background. When you make that sort of shuttle, then actually the vision becomes much more powerful. The abundance opens. You're suddenly spotting these opportunities all around you that keep you on track. You've still got the framework of the journey, but the important shift is it opens up the learning aspect of the journey. At a doing level, we focus far, far too much on results. And so whatever results we get, we may not actually get much learning out of that. Whereas if you're focusing on the vision and the abundance, you're in a very, very rich learning situation.
Epic.
So it's the journey that's important, most important, not the destination.
Epic. It's the journey that's most important, not the destination. Once again, another golden nugget. Before we wrap up the whole the section on putting the client first, I have two questions. One centered around what you were just talking about being versus doing. I shouldn't say is there any. What is the first step you would tell anybody? We won't go through the whole process. We don't have our command the time today to go through the whole process. But what would the first step you would be to recommend people who are in the doing state flip over and start to move towards the being state?
It would probably be to introduce them to being activities. So it may be introducing to forms of meditation, actually introducing them to another world. And quite a lot of the people that I have as clients are high-level coaches who've been very highly educated, which means they've got a lot of unlearning to do.
Yeah.
And so it can be, it can be quite challenging. So I think it's finding ways of introducing balance, introducing equilibrium, growing the being area alongside the doing, and moving into more and more a state of balance.
Okay.
Because what the being does is it puts the person in touch with their experience, it puts the person in touch with their feelings, it puts the person in touch with their soul, and it puts the person in touch with their energy.
And that's an epic place to be. And the final, that really is, and I could say so much more about it. I'm just cutting myself off because we could have a whole nother show all around this. But I want to wrap up putting the client first because I'm sure our audience would love to know when it comes to putting the client first. While this sounds like it all makes common sense, if somebody looks at themselves after our discussion realizes they might not be putting the client first, what's one initial step you can give them that they could take away and do today to start moving in the direction of putting the client first?
I think probably the most important thing is letting go of any particular outcomes, so that when you're meeting with someone, you don't have your sights set on a sale. You have your sights set on where can I be of greatest service. That's the question. That's the key question. And if you stick to that as your key question, the rest will take care of itself.
Wow, couldn't have said any better myself. That is epic, and that leads us into applying the new paradigm.
To watch the rest of this epic episode now, click on the link below the video. Do it now, you'll be glad you did. Are you still here? What are you waiting for? Watch the rest of this epic episode now by clicking on the link below the video.